We are literally weeks away from Paris 2024, and we are getting so very, very excited now that we are in July. And I'm also very excited to be getting back to one of our favourite sports on Off the Podium, the great sport of field hockey. We had Eddie Ockenden on very, very recently to talk all things to do with the Kookaburras, and now we're going to be talking all things to do with the Hockeyroos, because we have an Olympian on this show, represented Australia at the Tokyo Olympics, is on the cusp of her second Olympics, has a esteemed career in the sport, winning medals at the World Cup, Commonwealth Games, Champions Trophy, and Hockey One Championships, which I want to touch on a little bit too, on Australia's domestic league. It is a pleasure to welcome to Off the Podium, the one, the only, Greta Hayes. Greta, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on today.
It's a pleasure to have you on, and I want a special note to the shirt there for our video listeners, viewers right now. The Hockeyroos shirt, I like that. That's a fancy piece of merch. I think people need to wear them out in the streets more. I like it.
We have actually got some new merch tops that are pretty funky. They have all the names of all of the ex-Hockeyroos that have ever played on the back of them. They're pretty cool. It's not this one, but got gym after this, so this is my gym.
Is there that sort of a conversation starter then at the gym, like that kind of like, do people ask, are you a Hockeyroos? Or is this like the Hockeyroos gym where it's all the Hockeyroos players?
Yeah, it's the Waste gym. So, because we're based in Perth, so we train out of the WA Institute. So, on Monday afternoons, it's typically a Hockeyroos and Kookaburra takeover because both squads go through and the gym is just filled with us. So, no, not many questions.
I always find that fascinating though when it comes to like those venues like, you know, the WAS, or we talked to somebody recently about the AIS. So like right now, is it just a hotbed of so many different Olympians who are training their asses off for Paris? Like today's hockey day, as you said, but is tomorrow like, I don't know, athletics day, Wednesday swimming day? Like how's it there at the moment?
Well, there's not necessarily many national programs that are based out of Perth. Hockey is kind of the big one. There's definitely, we have like artistic.
I was going to say artistic swimming's there, isn't it?
Yeah. So we see them in there a fair bit. But a lot of it is more, I guess, the development players coming through and all across all different sports. There's lots of, basketballers and swimmers. There's a big Paralympic training for like the basketball and stuff there as well. So, it's spread across lots of different sports. But, it's not necessarily like the hockey's definitely the main team sport that's based out of Perth.
Fascinating that is the case. Is there a reason? I don't think we touched this on Eddie, and if you know the answer, that why is hockey based out of Perth? Like, what was it about Perth that was chosen for that to be the centralised spot for the Hockeyroos and the Kookaburras?
I think, and I could be wrong in saying this, but I believe back in whenever it was that it became centralised, I want to say the late 90s perhaps, that the coaches were from WA. So I think the Rick Charlesworth, Frank Murray era, I think they had a strong influence on the program moving over to WA, and then it's just been here since. And the WA government puts a lot of money into keeping our program here, and there were some bids from other states for the cycle post Paris to potentially move over east, but WA government pulled through, so we're staying here.
Which, it's a great city, Perth, isn't it? Like, I mean, I really enjoy Perth. Had you been there before, sort of like being centralised there at all? Because it's not a city that a lot of Australians will go to, or almost even unless they have to if they're from the East Coast.
Yeah, because it is quite far away from the East Coast. Like, it is a fair flight, and now the flights are quite expensive. But I'd been here only for hockey before, prior to moving here. So I moved here in 2019. I think I'd had 2 tournaments here before 2019. So I'd spent a little bit, chunks of time in Perth and explored the city a little bit. But, it's such an easy city to live in. It's cheap and it's a great lifestyle over here. Everything's easy. There's nowhere near as much traffic as Sydney. So life here is definitely simple. It's a good spot to have the program.
Very passionate people, Perth people, aren't they, when it comes to a lot of their sporting teams, right? Like, so I can imagine they get behind the hockey there quite passionately too, do they?
Yeah, there's definitely, I've noticed compared to being back home in Sydney, a bigger following of hockey here in Perth. It's a lot more, I guess people played in schools here a lot more, and there's lots of connections, it's, my brother's girlfriend knows this person. Every time you meet people, everyone kind of has some connection to the hockey world here. So definitely a lot more awareness of around hockey here as opposed to back in Sydney.
Speaking of Sydney, speaking of connections to hockey, Greta, we always like to generally find out how guests got involved in the sport. So for yourself, when was it that you decided to pick up a stick and give hockey a go?
So I was a bit of a later one, actually. Lots of the girls in my team at the moment, they picked up sticks at, 3, 4, got playing because it's a very family-driven sport in Australia, hockey. Most people do play because their parents played, which was my reason. My parents did play, and I've got 2 older sisters, and they both played hockey when they were, I guess, going into high school. And so by the time I kind of got to that age, I was like, okay, I guess I'll pick up a hockey stick as well. But before then, we'd kind of, gone through all of the different sports as you do when you're a kid, lots of little athletics, some gymnastics, some dancing, some tennis, some swimming. But my big one was soccer, and I loved soccer. And so at the age of 10, I was like, oh, I'll give hockey a try, but, soccer's kind of my jam. And then I gave hockey a go, and I actually really liked it, made some really good friends. And it got to the point as I went into high school that I had to kind of choose between schools and being able to do both sports. And I decided to, go with hockey.
Wow. Was there a particular reason why you chose hockey? Was it the friends aspect, or were you doing better in it? Kind of what did hockey win over soccer?
Definitely the friends aspect. Soccer was really fun, and I do love the game of soccer, but I looking back on those years and when I had to make that decision, I think I very quickly formed some really strong bonds with some of the girls who I'm still really great friends with back in Sydney. And so we kind of, you start a club and then you go and you do your reps for Sydney or whatever. And I formed those bonds early on in the picture. And that was definitely, I think, the main driving factor for me choosing hockey. And I think I also really liked, compared to soccer, I mean, obviously they're quite similar in a lot of ways, but hockey has that extra element of there's so much skill that comes with it. And there's constant technical work that you can constantly be working on. It's, I guess, a bit more detailed than soccer. And so that was definitely another element that kind of drove me. I like to go down to the field with Dad and do skills sessions and, learn your spins and all those different little fun technical things. So, yeah.
It is one of those things where if you can kind of master a few skills with a stick and a ball, it feels a little bit cooler than maybe if you can kick a ball on your foot a little bit fancier, right? You'd always have it in training in hockey where you're picking the ball up, you're rolling up on your stick, you're kind of doing those things, and you always feel like, oh, look what I can do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 100%. And I always think, okay, I've got because sometimes we play soccer and warm up for training these days. And I'm like, okay, what can I do with this? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to dummy step over the ball this way and go the other way. But that's about as exciting as it gets. You can juggle the ball on your foot. But yeah, with hockey, it's, the skills and stuff are endless.
Which did you get far in soccer? Was this something that had you chosen soccer, we could have been talking to a Matilda right now? Were you on that path that you sort of maybe were with hockey at the time?
Yeah, I started doing some rep stuff, and that was, I guess, the problem was because the rep commitments for soccer kind of started clashing with the rep commitments with hockey. I was already playing them on both weekends, but yeah, I remember there was some academies and stuff in Sydney that I started kind of getting more and more involved in, and obviously, the time commitment became bigger. So yeah, I think definitely similar stage at hockey, and I didn't make the state hockey team until under 15, so that was later on as well. So yes, I think I was kind of on that track with soccer.
Was the Olympics something that you paid attention to as a child, and obviously both being Olympic sports, did you sort of eye that as a potential that if I took a path in either of these, I could be an Olympian one day?
In my memory, no. And I remember back to Beijing Olympics in 2008, and I was in year 5 or year 6, and we were doing, little assignments on the Olympics. And, it's always cool. Watching the Olympics was always fun, and there was always a hype around it. But from my memory, I can't remember ever being okay, I want to play for Australia or I want to go to the Olympics. But I did a podcast a couple of months ago, and my parents listened to it. And then my mum sent me a message after the podcast, and because I got asked quite a similar question. And I was like, oh, I'd never really looked at the whole Australian thing as a big picture goal. And Mum said, oh, I remember when you were a kid and you had your goals written down and you were like, one, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And you've always just been such a goal setter and you've always, had an eye on what you want in life. So apparently maybe in my journal or diary that mum has apparently read, I did go to Australia or go to the Olympics. But in my memory, I never really like looked at that big picture goal. I was more of like I just want to play for my state. Like if I play for New South Wales under 15s, my life will be satisfied.
Well, I love the fact that, first of all, partly, hi, mum, if you're listening again. And secondly, why are you reading my diary? That's what I probably get from that, right? Like, I hope there wasn't other things in there which she's also gone. And also, by the way, Greta, I also read this part of your diary and we're going to talk later on.
I needed one of those diaries that had that little locker that you had as a kid that you could like lock there.
Yeah, which I was always, can I just say right now, and this is such a first world problem to admit, I was always jealous that as a young boy I wasn't meant to have one of them. And I always felt they were always targeted girls because they were pink and they had the lock.
Yeah,
and my friends
and
yeah, and I felt like it wasn't cool for like a teenage boy to have a pink diary with a lock. Nowadays I wouldn't care, but like back then,
that's fair enough.
first world problems here on Off the Podium, clearly. But I mean, I like hearing that though, when you can kind of unearth those sort of memories of things, because I guess we always have things as kids, right, that we probably say, write down, tell your mum, and then that's what your parents are there for, right? Like, oh, well, I remember when you used to say this. I'm like, I didn't say that, mum. So I guess, did that at all when you, I mean, fast forwarding a little bit to Tokyo, was there any moments in that during that period where maybe there was something that unearthed from yourself that, as a little girl, like this was kind of something that I maybe did look for, or did it not hit you in that way?
Yeah, I think so. Over that, I guess those COVID years before Tokyo and whatnot, I was doing some talks in Sydney because I'd relocated back home during COVID, and I got involved with the Olympics Unleashed program. And I'd pulled up on my laptop like a speech that I'd done. I think must have been straight after school. I can't remember what it was for. And it was the year that I was going into Junior World Cup. So I would have been, I think, 18 or 19 or something. And at the start of the speech, it was like, I can't remember. I was introducing myself and I was like, I hope that like by the end of this year, I will have gone to the Junior World Cup. I will have made a medal. I will have cracked into the development squad. And then hopefully in like a few years' time, who knows, maybe I'll be in Tokyo kind of thing. And I remember like I looked back on it and I was like, wow, like I literally ticked off all of those things. Like that's really cool.
Fantastic.
So yeah, that was a bit of a big picture, big full circle moment. So yeah, it's definitely still cool when you achieve these goals that obviously, you've seen since you were a child, the Olympics and all that kind of thing. When you do tick those things off, it's, you got to kind of take a moment and be proud of yourself.
Because I also imagine you would pay attention to them slightly differently the more you progress up the ladder. So I can imagine, say, Rio, for example, you're maybe watching hockey slightly differently than you did 4 years prior because you're going to Junior World Cups. You're on the cusp of making that senior team. Do you find yourself sort of watching Olympics differently when you're going up the ladder?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a kid, you're kind of just idolizing those people in the Olympics and you're never really thinking, oh, like that might be me. And even at Rio, to think that then the next cycle I was there, that like I would never have thought looking at those Rio Olympics being like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in Tokyo. For me, I'd always kind of had my sights set on Paris and I'd thought to myself in my head, oh, like I'll be like pretty peak age there. Like that will be the one that I'll set my sights on. And Tokyo was just kind of, I guess, a bit of a bonus and a bit of a surprise in a way. And yeah, so definitely the closer you get, definitely your perspective changes.
Before we touch on sort of some of those represented ones, one thing I like to find out just about the hockey scene in Sydney, because Eddie and I were talking the other week, catching up, good friends clearly, but obviously that real like local community vibe that Hobart had, particularly around the club scene. We've only really got like the one sort of competition with the clubs and everything along those lines being the city side of things. But how's it in Sydney when it, say, comes to club competition of hockey versus school? Is it sort of one big sort of league? Depends on the regions. Is it real family focused? Like, I mean, give us a bit of an overview of how that sort of works.
The hockey scene in Sydney is a really tough one. Obviously, it's a very private school, I'd say, sport through high school. Lots of the girls' private schools play it. And so you get I guess, a chunk of people playing hockey who have gone through private schools and they've continued because they enjoy it or they're good or whatever. And then you've got the other chunk of people who play because their parents play. And I think Sydney, what makes it tough in Sydney is obviously it's a big city and there's a large population of people who play so many different sports. And I guess the traffic and the travel, and there's so many things that make the hockey scene, I guess, a bit difficult in Sydney. There's obviously, lots of teams, and there's still lots of people playing because the population's bigger. So yes, you've got more people playing, but I'd say that the vibe, I guess, comparing Sydney to, I can only compare. Well, actually, I did play a little bit in Tassie, so I can compare it to Hobart, and I can also compare it to Perth. There's definitely less of like a vibe, I'd say, at the games. You get less crowds because obviously, I don't know, I guess I put it down to the travel and the traffic and all of that kind of thing. You don't get as many people to the matches, even like grand finals played in many with Sydney Uni multiple years ago. And, the crowd is like pretty lacking. And for like, a Division 1, like first grade grand final, like it can be a bit of a letdown, I think, when you compare it to the vibe here at the Perth Hockey Stadium finals. It's like crazy. Like the stadium is filled with people. It's buzzing. Like everyone from all the different clubs come together. They've all got like, party buses and like they make a big weekend out of it, really. So I think Sydney's can definitely improve in a lot of ways with the hockey scene. But yeah, I think there are a lot of challenges in terms of numbers and how like spread out, I guess, the city is. And it's also, you've got the first Premier League in men's and women's, but then you've also got so many different competitions under it. You've got Metro, which is like where it's all combined, and then you've got the little pocket. So you've got like Sydney South, and then you've got Northern competition. So there's lots of different competitions, and it's definitely, it's a network. There's lots of movement and lots of pieces to pull together into that Sydney league. I also think, though, what makes the Sydney stuff harder again is Sydney Hockey League is the men's league, and then there's Sydney Women's Hockey League, SWIL, which is the women's. They're two completely different leagues. And
they're not like integrated. It's not like one league with a men's and a women's side. They're basically completely run separately.
Yeah. And so what makes that, like the downfall of that is the men always play on a Saturday, the women always play on a Sunday. So you're never playing back-to-back games here in Perth. The ones men played, the ones women played, the twos, you get these club days. It's like, great environment. And that's, something that I don't think is going to help and the Sydney League isn't going to grow and get bigger and stuff until they can combine. And even I went and played in Belgium for a year, and that was the exact same thing there. There you have the ones, and you have these big club days. People want to hang around, people socialize. And, until we can do that in Sydney, I think the competition isn't, long rant, but
no, I asked that because I find with hockey that it's a fascinating one to talk to people about depending where you are in the world, because it's sort of, obviously on this show we cover all Olympic sports, so I often refer to it as field hockey because we then speak to ice hockey players from the winter. And I lived in Canada, and you would talk to them that I grew up playing field hockey, and people would sort of look at you and go, "Oh, that's a girl's sport. Men don't play field hockey. Like, what are you talking about?" And even that sort of blew me away. Like, oh, I didn't realize that in certain parts of the world maybe it's a gender-based sport. Like, but then even then you say what you're saying about Sydney, about how that's all that. Like, it's just, it is one of these unique sports where it is very much a regional side of how it's played, where it's played, how it's formed and everything. And you've obviously experienced it in multiple parts of the world yourself as well.
And the other interesting about New South Wales in particular is that it's much bigger in the country than it actually is in the city. So I remember we used to play a thing called City versus Country, and we used to get absolutely whopped by the country girls. Like, I think we were losing games like 12-0. You'd play like a little competition each year because it's really big in places like Lithgow and Bathurst, Orange, South Coast, all those places. That's, I guess, another challenge with the whole Sydney competition is actually there's so many leagues and stuff in the country that are pretty high quality. But that's, pretty different than to say Victoria, where everyone pretty much comes from Melbourne and everyone's playing the hockey in Melbourne. So
yeah. Well, you'd seen that in Tasmania, of course, like what you're saying about there in
Yeah.
Perth with like those days. Like I remember grand final days, like, you know, it was an event. Like it didn't matter whether juniors, seniors, men's, women's, it was just everybody came. You've obviously only got really the one main facility in Hobart, but it's a pretty good facility, and it's also like, you know, it all comes together. So fascinating. It's really fascinating to hear that. So interesting.
Yeah, no, Tassie definitely does it really well as well. Yeah, Tassie and Perth, I think, good hockey scene.
It's. I want to touch on the Junior World Cup because I talked to Eddie a little bit about. I remember in 2001, Hobart had the Junior Men's World Cup, and it was a big deal. That's why we got a lot of upgrades to our facilities. I was a ball kid, like I remember it. It was a vibe. It was fantastic. And it was just that real taste and exposure to seeing international hockey at that level. What was your experience like back in particularly 2016, getting a bronze medal? You're playing for Australia. You're in Chile. I mean, you know, I can't imagine you ever thought maybe that growing up that you'd be going there. But I mean, that must have been a pretty amazing experience and give you a real taste of what was to come later on at Commonwealth Games and Olympic Games.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was kind of, I guess, in the older bracket of kids in 2016 for that under 21 tournament. So I'd kind of been in the lead up to it for, I want to say, at least 3 years. We'd got to travel to some really amazing places around the world. We'd had lots of different tournaments. So we went to England for a tournament and played against all the European teams. We'd been to Argentina for a trip and played against the Argentinians and some other South American teams. And we'd done Japan. So yeah, we were lucky. We got to go to so many different places and do so much travel. And that was definitely a big eye opener because obviously up until then, I hadn't kind of gone around Australia in like these national tournaments. But being able to travel internationally and play against other international junior teams was really cool. And sometimes it aligned with our senior team. So we'd go and then get to watch Champions Trophy or whatever it was back in the day, watch the Hockeyroos playing. And so that was definitely, really cool. And then, Junior World Cup in itself was an experience. And yes, being in Santiago, you know, big culture change. And, but we did a really good job over there to be able to get that bronze medal. And, you know, a lot of the girls were already in the Hockeyroos, and then a lot of us have then come through after that and joined the Hockeyroos a bit later. So it's pretty cool looking back at the squad that we did have because, majority of us did end up playing for the Hockeyroos, which is pretty cool. And definitely then prepared me pretty well to then come on and join into the more senior stuff. After Junior World Cup, I did get into, I guess, the development squad. So I did climb into that rank, but then I decided it was time to break away from NSWIS and have a time in a bit of different environment. So headed over to Belgium for a season, which was the best thing I could have done for my hockey. So yes, the exposure at those junior international competitions was great, but then to get away from, you know, your everyday routine that I'd been then training for, I don't know, 6-7 years, like such a long time throughout high school. I think I'd kind of burnt myself out a little bit. And so, Belgium was, you know, being exposed to then the more European style week in, week out in a really high level competition was awesome. And I think that was probably the best thing that I could have done to then get into the senior Australian team and make my debut.
What is that decision-making like when it goes to choosing, say, Belgium? Is it a case of you weigh up the big leagues? I'm thinking, no doubt, the Netherlands, Germany, India has a big league, don't they? Like sort of these countries where hockey is very big. And how does it come to that decision that it's Belgium you choose? Like how does all that kind of play out?
A couple of different components. So firstly, I guess it's the networks and the connections that you already have. So the team that I ended up going to was, the men's team of Heracles was coached by a guy from Queensland. So I knew of him. So you kind of just got to put out some feelers and see what comes back and who's looking for what positions and that kind of thing. The Netherlands is a tough one because obviously they, are so highly renowned in international hockey and they only want the best of the best. So me being in like the junior Australian like development stuff wasn't really looking to be going and playing in the top Dutch league. I did look into Germany as well. So that was definitely an option. But Belgium was, I don't know, I like had such a great time. And the language was a big one because had an Italian coach. Then obviously we had Australian people at the club. I was there with another Australian, and then we had an Argentinian girl in our team. So that basically everyone spoke English. And in Antwerp, which is where we were based, they all learn French and Flemish and English. So they all have three languages and they're pretty
Wow.
fluent in all of them. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So that was a big one. And then, yeah, you just like have to suss out who can offer you what. They set us up with a house and a car. And then we got paid as well. So
Right.
it was a really good deal. And we were still playing in the top Belgian league. We didn't go well. But yeah, I think I'm really glad that I went to Belgium over somewhere like Holland, because I think in Holland, as an international player, you're definitely not valued as much as we were in Belgium. It's nice going to somewhere where you feel valued, you feel like the team wants you, and you feel like you can make a difference and contribute. And so, yeah, really happy that we chose to go to Belgium.
And let's be honest, it's cliche to go to Amsterdam. Antwerp's where it's out. Like, I mean, great Olympic city.
Really
So,
cool.
but I mean, it's just, I love kind of hearing when people can go to these sort of places where maybe you're not thinking that you would go to, because I know Belgium's obviously a great hockey nation, not taking away from Belgium, obviously won the gold in the men's in Tokyo. But it's sort of, I could imagine that a lot of people probably who maybe don't follow hockey closely would be thinking you're going to go to the Netherlands or Germany or India. But I mean, great experiences. Does that then help you? Because being that you make your debut for the Hockeyroos in 2018, you're obviously on the development squad, as you said there. Like, is that making Hockeyroos selectors look at you a little bit more and kind of your performances over in Belgium to help you get on the senior squad?
I don't think the coaches at the time looked at any of what happened in Belgium. I think that was completely separate. But basically, I'd played that whole season in Belgium, came back home to Sydney for a couple of months in the lead up to what was AHL back then, and then played in that AHL competition. And I remember the coach at the time came up to me after the grand final, and we'd won the grand final. So I think, being able to win the national competition always reflects quite well on the teams, but also then obviously the individuals as well. And I remember the coach came up to me after the game and said something like, "Oh, we're considering you for the trophy." And I like looked at him like, "What's the trophy?" And he was like, "Champions Trophy." And I was like, "What?" Like, I did not even think it was like ever on the cards. Like, had no idea what he was talking about. So whether or not it made him look at me anymore, I can't say, but I think it probably had I think I came back really enjoying hockey again, feeling fresh and feeling, I guess, inspired to keep going. Whereas before I'd left, I'd kind of, ticked off the Junior World Cup off the list, and I was in the development, and I just kind of felt like I was plateauing and just, yeah, as I said, a bit burnt out. So I think it definitely gave me a bit of a fresh perspective, and I probably came back a bit energized and playing better hockey.
I was going to say that confidence level, though. Like, I mean, to get told that you're in consideration to go to the Champions Trophy and represent Australia, I mean, like that just, what do you even digest that? Once he leaves and you kind of just, do you just take a moment? Do you call your mum? Do you call a friend? Like, what do you do in that moment?
Yeah, well, my family was there at the time. And so I went up to them and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I just had like the most embarrassing conversation. I had no idea what the coach was talking about." And then I remember I was road tripping back from the Gold Coast down to Sydney on, like, I guess the way home we chose to drive instead of fly. And I remember the team came out when, like, officially while I was on the road. And it was just crazy. I was like, how is this even happening? Like, yeah, just amazing.
Silver medal at that Champions Trophy too, if I'm not mistaken. What happened to the Champions Trophy, just quickly? Is that just gone completely? Do we not have a Champions Trophy anymore?
No. So when they brought in Pro League, they got rid of Champions Trophy and any other of those like international kind of mini tournaments. And yeah, so fully just like kicked that one out and brought in Pro League. And so that's the only, I guess, main like international competition each year.
I always liked the Champions Trophy. It was just, I don't know, it was one of those ones that you kind of always heard about and watched and paid attention to. But, I mean, silver medal, it's better than the bronze that you got at the Junior World Champs. But, I mean, it's always one of those catch-22s, though, that you lose a final, so you obviously end the tournament on a loss. So do you leave with disappointment because you don't win the final, or is it a case of, oh, we got a silver medal? That's still a pretty big deal.
Look, that was actually quite like a blur in my memory, to be honest. The Champions Trophy, I don't know, it feels like a lifetime ago. And, I'd kind of gone in with not heaps of expectations on myself, like being my first tournament. I hadn't really trained that much with the Hockeyroos in the lead up. I'd come over here for like a little camp in the lead up to going over to China. So, I think we were all pretty happy with the silver, to be honest. Obviously, you're always chasing that gold. But I think from my memory, I'm pretty sure like we put up a good fight, both in the round game and in the final, against the Dutch. And, they're always going to be a really difficult team to beat. And we always know that. So, yeah, I think there were other very quality teams at that tournament. So to make the gold medal match in the first place was big. Definitely disappointed, obviously, not to win, but, got to be happy enough with a silver.
How much is that step up from junior to senior hockey? Like, are you really feeling the quality, pace, things like that at, say, a Champions Trophy versus 2 years prior to the Junior World Cup?
Yeah, I remember when we played the Dutch in the first game at Champions Trophy, and I was just like so shook. I was like, oh my gosh, the midfielder, like I just felt like I could not keep up with my opposition midfielder. I felt like she was behind me, then she was in front of me, then she was behind me, and she was in front of me. And I feel like I've always been someone who's like really prided myself on like I'm fit and I can like run out the games, and I'm going to be the first one getting to the far post, and then I'm going to be the first one back into defense, and like I'm just going to beat my midfielder that way. And I remember they're like getting a bit technical, but the way that they would just kind of get the ball, give it, and then sprint into the space and then get it back again and then do all these like 2-on-1s. I felt like I was getting dominoed down the field. And I think that was, I guess, my first exposure to like real quality international hockey. And like that is what I guess the world's best do. It's pretty simple, and all you have to do is, get the ball, give it, go to space, get the ball again. On repeat. And so, yeah, definitely a big step up. I definitely hadn't felt that kind of pace, that speed, and like, I guess the quality of basics in the junior tournaments. So, yeah, and that's why I say that tournament was a bit of a blur. I feel like, I did my job to an extent, but I definitely wasn't making a huge impact on the games. So, yeah, it was definitely a learning curve, that one.
Do you then, though, reflect on that to where you're at now, where you can no doubt match it with these players, beat these players, and really put it up to them to see how far you have come in 6 years since that tournament?
Yeah, I think my improvements internationally haven't always been very linear. I've, like, since coming over to Perth, been pretty up and down with injuries along the way. Been in and out of selection a few times. But I really strongly feel at the moment, the more games I get, the more I have potential to be better and better. And I just want to improve. And I think I am now at that point where every game I play, I'm getting a bit better. I'm getting a bit more confident. I'm able to take on the opposition more and more. And so, yeah, I definitely look back then and I'm like, wow, I've come a long way, but I still really feel a strong drive that, I've got so much more to give. And I know circling back, I'd said, oh, Paris is, where I'm aiming for, that I'm going to be peak age then. But now I'm kind of looking at it and I'm like, oh, I still feel like after Paris, I'm going to have more to give. Like, I feel like I've still just got, more improvements to make. So yeah. Always.
You're still so young, Greta. Come on, you're not even 30 yet, right? Brisbane 2032. Don't even want to look at Paris. Let's just, Hockeyroos have got a home Olympic gold medal to defend. The last time we had a home Olympics, got to defend it on that level. But it's sort of must be such an interesting sort of journey though to even sort of think back that to kind of where you get with that, because I mean, I love hearing that from athletes when it goes from the tiers that you go up to, and then maybe you get to like the top tier, and then all of a sudden you're just like, shit, this is something else, and then kind of you don't wake up one day and just go, okay, now I'm good enough to play against these, other players. It's just all of a sudden maybe it's a pinch me moment going like, oh, okay, well, she used to beat me, but now she sucks because I'm really good against her.
Yeah, look, I don't have too many of those moments, but
I was going to say, you can name names if you want to with that. Is there much like sledging and chirping going on out there on the field in sort of these tournaments? And if so, who are the nations that are the worst at it? Who are the ones out there that are always chirping against the Aussies?
I don't think that women's hockey is that big on the whole sledging thing. I'd say it gets more like whingy internationally. So I think there's certain nations
who Greta?
When you play.
It's English, right? It's English. Say it. I said it. You can just nod and move on if you want to.
But you know that when you come up against nations like that, they're going to be at the umpire like screaming, putting their hands up, wanting every single free hit. But yeah, I haven't played a game where I've had people like sledging me personally. It definitely obviously steps up physically, and there's a lot more of holding and like that kind of sneaky stuff that goes on off ball. But yeah, definitely not so much. I don't know. I think probably it happens a little bit more in the men's games, I'm assuming. But look, I think we're pretty nice, to be honest. Maybe we should be sledging more.
Go for it. Just bring back the sledging, right? Like let's
hate that.
Oh, I mean, you can be the nice one. Everyone else can do it, right? Like, like come Paris, like that's what we're known for. The Hockeyroos are out there, like look out. Bring some of your winter cousins, some of that, bit of a biff out there. Doesn't quite work in field hockey, I realise, but kind of goes that way. The lead up to Tokyo, firstly, the delay. Were you sort of hindered by that? I mean, like, how do you reflect back on that 12-month delay for yourself and making that squad for Tokyo?
I personally was 100% helped by that delay. In 2020, at the start of the year, I'd found myself very luckily reinstated into the squad. I definitely very easily could have missed out on the squad that year. I'd had some injuries at the end of 2019, so I wasn't in the best place physically. And so I knew in 2020 that I was cutting it very fine to be at anywhere near my peak physically, let alone, back into stick and ball kind of action. And so when that announcement came that the Olympics was being postponed, for me, I think I was like, shit, yeah, like now I've got a whole nother year of like improving. I'd only been in the program for 1 year. So I was like, this is like great for me. Like I've got a whole nother year. Like this is going to be great. And I think also I'd moved over in 2019 and I'd just kind of come back from playing in Belgium and I'd felt a little bit unsettled, I want to say. So I'd come back from Belgium, I'd played this national AHL league and then gone over to China, played my first games for Australia, come home briefly and then had to pack up my life and then move over to Perth by the start of 2019. So I'd kind of gone through all these big changes. I'd come out of a relationship as well then at the start of 2019 and lots of different factors kind of led to me, I guess, struggling a bit physically, mentally, like every single way in 2019. And I definitely did just struggle my way through that year. It definitely wasn't a highlight, even though, it should have been one of those, I've just moved over to Perth, I'm in the Australian team. Like it could have been a great year. But, things just didn't really go my way that first year. I also, in that first few months, I'd found out that I had this autoimmune condition called ankylosing spondylitis. It's a mouthful, but it's kind of like rheumatoid arthritis but it affects your spine instead of your fingers and toes and stuff. So I'd been trying to manage that, seeing the rheumatologist, started on all this new medication. So it was just 2019 was a lot. And so going back home in 2020 for COVID was, I think, what I kind of needed to get settled and like rejig myself and rejig my body to be able to then go again come 2021. So, in the processes of obviously going home, I then had to come back over to Perth at the end of 2020 for selection and whatnot. And so had to do lots of isolations. And I think over the time I've done like 6 or 8 weeks of home isolations or hotel quarantine. And like I thrived in them because I feel like I'm, a go, go, go person. And I always overcommit myself with a million things. And so those home isolations actually just like it taught me so many lessons. And I just figured out how to stop and slow down and do things for me. And so, come 2021, I'd learned so much about myself. I felt like a completely different person to how I'd finished 2019. And, I want to say that had the Olympics have been in 2020, there's no way that I would have ended up in Tokyo. And I'd, really come good in 2021 and was putting out some pretty solid performances, and lucky enough to then head over to Tokyo.
So what was that moment like with all of that you had sort of overcome, that when you got the phone call, email, whatever it was that told you that, Greta, you're on the squad, you're going to the Olympics?
So wild. So first of all, with hockey at the Olympics, they only take 16 players. And in previous years, it's been 16 players, one reserve and one goalkeeper. And the reserve and goalkeeper go over, stay outside of the village, don't have anything to do with the Olympic squad whilst they're, in the city. And so what had happened in 2021 was I'd kind of I'd made my way from like, okay, I think I'm really at the edge of this 27-person squad to, okay, now I'm like getting, selected for some games and maybe I actually have a shot at this. And then the 16 came out and I wasn't in the original 16. And I remember opening that email. I was down at the beach and it wasn't a huge surprise. I knew that I was really on the verge, but I knew that the girls in my position were very experienced and I would have to be, coming up against them, kicking them out of their positions if I wanted to go. So, I was realistic. I knew that my chances weren't great. And then once that 16 came out, I just really knew that I was fighting for a spot to be a reserve. And with the Tokyo Olympics, something that ended up unfolding. Well, first of all, the email came out a couple of weeks later. I was at a petrol station and I opened the email and saw that my name, and they changed the rules. So there was 2 players, 1 goalie was the reserves. Saw my name there and called my family group and in our WhatsApp group and just like tears, so many tears. I was so stoked, so happy. It was like I'd said before, it wasn't something that I'd grown up being like, I want to go to Tokyo Olympics. This was just like a bonus, I guess. And I still felt like I was still young and pretty new to the squad, which I was in the scheme of things. I think at that point I'd only played, I want to say 10 games for Australia. Because obviously COVID had thrown a spanner in the works. So I'd just played the Champions Trophy and then a couple of games in 2019 and that had been, 2019 and that had been it. So, it was just a bonus, I guess. And then as things kind of unfolded in the lead up to Tokyo, I found out, actually the reserves get to stay in the village. Actually, you guys, it's become an 18-person squad and we're just going to be able to rotate through and play whoever we want. And you guys will be getting games while we're over there and all of that kind of thing. So it just kind of got better and better. And I just kept on getting good news. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So being over in Tokyo itself, I had gone from being a reserve to being part of this 18-person squad, getting games in the Olympics when I'd never really expected to. So, it was just bonuses all round.
Did you have any moment when you were there where it hit you that you're an Olympian? Was it getting the uniform, like seeing the rings, hitting the ball for the first time? Any moment that it kind of hit you where you were?
I think there were like lots of moments. I think obviously walking into the room and seeing the uniform there, that's a really big one. Walking into the food court for the first time, that was a really big one because, there's always so much hype about the food court at the Olympics. In saying that, there were a lot of ways that things were very different at that Olympics. So, you couldn't just go and I had some friends from other countries. You couldn't just go and chat to them and hang out with them because you had to wear your mask and you had to stay 5 meters or whatever it was away from anyone else. So there were lots of those COVID rules that definitely made the village life a little bit different to what I'd imagined. And then, obviously stepping out onto the field was a big one, but again, different to what I'd ever imagined because there were no crowds in the stands. It was just empty. You know, you always dream of like, oh, well, the Olympics, there's all these crowds and, you know, you won't be able to hear each other and let's practice a game where we can't speak because, you know, at the Olympics you can't hear, but then like obviously, you know, there's no one in the crowd so you can hear a pin drop.
It's just that's so weird. Like it was weird watching it. I just can't imagine what it's like sort of being there. Because even, I guess, going back to what you're saying, even playing, you know, locally in Sydney, there's still some people there, right? Like it's not completely empty.
Yeah. It was so strange. And yeah, obviously it was like a last minute call from the Japanese government to not have the crowd. So all the stands were completely set up, ready for all of what would usually be an Olympic crowd. So yeah, it was a strange experience, but obviously like amazing.
Before I just touch quickly on the tournament itself, I mean, you touched on like the village and sort of the food court, things like that. We always like to hear from, you know, other experiences. Did you get into like pin trading, uniform trading, anything along those lines that you were allowed to do, given that they were obviously very unique games?
Did a bit of uniform trading, definitely.
Who'd you get? What did you get like in terms of swapping?
Well, actually, it was a Spanish guy. I don't know what sport he was from. He came up to me towards the end and he was like, oh, I promised my girlfriend that I'd give her an Australian singlet or top. Is there any way we could like do a swap? And I was like, sure. Like, I didn't really want like your Spanish, just like t-shirt like this. And I was like, sure, go for it. So I swapped with him and I actually gave it away to my housemate's boyfriend the other day. I was like, I never wear this Spanish t-shirt.
Did you later find out that was probably like Rafael Nadal, or so you weren't even paying attention, right? Like, I don't know who he was, but you know, yeah. Oh, that was Ralph. Oh, was it? Oh, okay, cool. You know.
So I think that was kind of the only uniform. Oh no, actually that's a lie. I swapped with some of the Dutch girls, some of their hockey. So I've got a few pieces of that. But there was a funny thing. We had our accreditation passes and you'd go around and you'd swap as many pins as you could to get as many countries as you could. I've got that actually just in my room. I got lots of countries, not the most, like some people spent the whole Olympics just like purely dedicated to getting every single pin that they possibly could. And then you'd run out of your Australian pins. So you're going around being like, oh, can I please have your Argentinian pin? I'm sorry, I don't have anything to trade you with.
I know Rafael Nadal. I can get you a shirt.
So definitely got a few pins and a few bits of uniform. But
I love hearing it's all the little things that I love hearing about that because, I mean, you know, it's often said that Olympic pin trading is the unofficial sport of the Olympics and I'm aware there's just so competitive things like that. But the uniform one is something I like learning a lot too. And the one I really want to get to the bottom of, Greta, and I don't know if you came across any Americans or tried it, but I have heard that Americans are not allowed to trade their uniform because it's like Ralph Lauren, it's very proper. I have heard that is not allowed. So I don't know if I've never had this confirmed or denied before. So...
I'm unsure. I did not try and swap with any Americans. And there weren't any the US girls didn't qualify. So, you know, you often have like connections to the hockey teams. And so we didn't even, So
I remember that the Junior World Cup, being a ball kid, and we were trying to like, you know, on that last day particularly, you're like, oh, what can I get and everything. We had pins, but the one I remember vividly was the New Zealanders had really cool jackets. I can't remember what they looked like, but we all loved it. And where the ball kids were allowed to sit watching was in the players' stand where the players would watch. So we'd be chummy. We're like, you know, 13, 12-year-old kids, you know, whatever. And we got chummy with the New Zealanders and we're like, we really want your jacket. What can we do to get a jacket? And they're like, if you can learn the haka and you can do it completely accurately, we will give you a jacket. And my dad worked with a Kiwi at the time and I was very serious about this. So I tried to get him to teach me the haka. Long story short, I didn't get a jacket because I didn't do it properly. So,
Yeah, well, the haka's difficult, isn't it? Because you got to look at like the certain places and get your mouth going in the right ways, and
it's really tricky. Hard. Yeah, but it's fun, sort of the element of that.
The hot commodity at Tokyo for us was everyone wanted our bucket hats.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, all the other countries just wanted them.
How many do you get? Are you allowed to kind of
only one? So if you trade your bucket hat, you better be trading for something really good. That's
where you want Rafael Nadal. The Simone Biles or someone like that, you know, you bump into like, hey, Simone, you know, and also the coffee, of course. How did you find the barista being there?
So good. Yeah. So good. And like I drink almond milk lattes, and I'm an almond milk snob. I'll only drink Milk Lab. Now it's, Alternative Brewing Co. or whatever. But yeah, so they had the goods over there. So that was a game changer. Yeah.
Well, they're back for Paris.
Yes, I have heard this.
Yeah,
so it's one of our first questions.
yeah, no, it is definitely back for Paris. Overall, of course, obviously, you go undefeated in the group stage, but then fall to India in the quarterfinals. I mean, the obvious question is, how did that feel? The obvious answer is it's disappointing. But I mean, it's been 3 years now. How do you take anything away from that? Sort of what happened in Tokyo? Does it drive the hunger a little bit more now for the Hockeyroos going into Paris?
Yeah, absolutely. We, off the back of that whole period, that loss, into the next cycles, we had time off to think about it all and consume all of those emotions, which were obviously running really high. And we had to come back into hotel quarantine in Perth. So that obviously was another challenge that we were kind of faced with after that, I guess, sudden loss that, we weren't necessarily expecting. And we've, put a lot of things into place since then. We've started doing a lot of mindfulness, like high performance mindset work, which has been really big. So Emma Murray, who worked with Richmond over years ago when they went from that through their premiership years, she came into our program and delivered some, amazing work with us off the back of the Olympics heading into the Com Games and World Cup. And then off the back of Emma working with us, we had Dave Asprey come and join, who works underneath her. So we're still involved now with Dave Asprey, and Emma Murray works with the Kookaburras now. So doing some of that work to really focus on our A game, our B game, controlling what we can focus on, sticking to our process. And really, I guess, narrowing down our focus in high pressure moments has made such a big difference for us in those high pressure, high stress moments. For example, at World Cup, when we were in the bronze medal game, we're a goal down against Germany and we ended up coming back and winning. And I think, that was kind of the highlight in my mind, in my memory, if I think to how we've improved. I think that is defines how we've improved since Tokyo. And I think I wasn't playing in that game against India. I was sitting in the stands with the two other girls, and it was awful to watch because, people have trained for so many years of their life and they're out there, and I just, you want to help, but there's obviously nothing you can do. You're just sitting there watching this whole thing unfold. And yeah, it was devastating because I think it wasn't for any lack of effort that the girls couldn't score against India. It was just the way that the game went. But I do think had we had these tools in place now that we have worked on, I wonder if we could have changed that result back in Tokyo. And obviously you can't say that you would or wouldn't have, but I know now that we're a lot more in tune with what we need to focus on in moments like that when things aren't necessarily going our way. So yeah, definitely made some big jumps and leaps in that area.
Because it's this quarterfinal curse, Greta, since Sydney, isn't it? That the Hockeyroos just sadly have at the Olympics since obviously getting gold back in Sydney. It's just it's the quarterfinals that just haven't there. But having said that, the history on the flip side of that, if we win a quarterfinal, pretty much we generally win a gold medal. It was one time we didn't win a gold medal making to the semis back in 1984. But since then, 88, 96, 2000, get out of the quarterfinals, gold medal. So you got history on your side if you get over the quarters.
Statistic to know, I'll keep that in mind. But, I think still every time now that we play India and, we don't really have the same setup in other tournaments, but I know in World Cup, coming into those quarterfinal games, there's definitely a bit of trauma there still, 100%. I think, you'd be lying if you said, oh, we don't think about what happened in the quarterfinal against India. You hear that game, the song that they played when the Indians scored, and that just gives me major PTSD. Oh,
the Beware of the Boys Punjabi MC.
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah. I used to like that song. Now I don't. There you go.
Yeah, me too. So, but I think now, yeah, as I said, we know what to focus on rather than getting distracted by who we're playing or what game it is.
Wow. I actually just want to, I will correct myself one thing to boost it even more for the Hockeyroos. In 1984, when Australia finished fourth, there actually weren't quarters or semi-finals. It was based purely on the standings where you finished at the end of the tournament. So, therefore, if Australia wins a quarter final, they go on to win the gold medal at the Olympics. There is your statistic.
There was no gold medal game.
It was basically Netherlands finished first on the standings. They won the gold medal. West Germany, second. They got the silver medal. The United States, bronze medal. There you go.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So just saying, Australia has a 100% track record of winning an Olympic gold medal in women's field hockey when they win a quarterfinal. So there you go. But number 4 in the world right now, the Hockeyroos get the bronze, of course, at the World Cup back in 2022, silver at the Commonwealth Games as well. So, I mean, this is tracking in well. I mean, everything what you're saying there, I mean, imagine the vibe and everything going into Paris. There's obviously some confidence in this squad that 24 years without a medal in the Olympics for women's hockey, that this could be about to be broken.
Yeah. And, there's multiple girls in the squad who have gone through a few cycles. This is now their third Olympics. I think maybe even a fourth for Jane, potentially. And yeah, so there's definitely, confidence in that seniority, like that experience that we have in the group now. Obviously, it's never, easy going, and we're always facing new challenges against teams who are, getting better and better as well. So, we've recently had this series against China and Japan here in Perth. And, that was really tough games for us. China really gave us some strong competition. So, we've definitely got things that we still need to be working on. But I think that having lead up competitions like that show us, where teams are breaking through and what we need to tighten up on. And definitely, having more of those games in the lead up to the Olympics gives us a bit more confidence compared to, say, Tokyo, which we only really played New Zealand in the lead up, and that was kind of it. But yeah, lots of seniority and lots of experience in the squad.
I'm looking at the group. Argentina, easy. Britain, easy. Spain, easy. South Africa, easy. America. I mean, I don't know much about American field hockey. Bronze medalist from Los Angeles 40 years ago. But how do you look at somewhere like a country like America where I guess nobody probably even expects them to be involved in field hockey, but here they are, a competitor at the Olympics?
Yeah, you know what? Like, they have come a long way in the last few years. Obviously, with the next Olympics being in LA, they've, I guess, put a lot of money and time into their program. And looking at them when they qualified at the start of the year, they had a great tournament, and we got to play them in India in Pro League just recently, and they are a highly skilled team, super physical, got some slick skills. So yeah, they're definitely not a team to underestimate. I think they definitely have their strengths, and the American hockey system, like with the whole college thing over there, is very different to what we have in Australia. But I think, in a way it probably hinders their program a little bit, but I guess they've learnt how to make the most of it, and they've got a really strong squad now. So yeah, they'll be a really tough one to face. Definitely. They've definitely been pumping money and pumping, the time into that program. So that'll be tough.
Looking forward to seeing how it plays out for them. And yeah, they got some form-winning medals at the Los Angeles Olympics, so 4 years' time. And I said to Eddie a couple of weeks ago, Greta, of course, too, that the hockey being played at the Stade Yvon I cannot speak French. It's the stadium where they basically had the opening closing ceremony athletics 100 years ago at the Paris Olympics. And Australia form, gold medal, the great Nick Winter winning the men's triple jump back in 1924 in that stadium. So inspiration for you to use. You're welcome. So,
yes, you're teaching me a lot of things today.
That's why we get guests on the show. It's to inspire them ahead of going to the Olympics. Now, 2 things before we get to our final set of questions. Speaking of inspiration, let's bring him now. Our show mascot, Cherry. Here he is. I want you to meet Cherry. He's our podcast mascot. He's got a gold medal, and I want to try and use him for inspiration for you, Greta. Do you think Cherry can bring you inspiration and the Hockeyroos inspiration?
Absolutely. That looks like just the inspiration I need today.
Right, you're welcome. We're going to get some pins and things made out that we're going to get to you out there that you can, don't trade cherry pins. You keep that for yourself, okay? Just, they're going to be very valuable. But, inspiration there. And speaking of inspiration, I wanted to touch quickly on as well that you were recently named the LGBTQ plus role model of the year at the Pride in Sport Awards. Congratulations, first of all. But you're obviously very big on this side for advocacy and everything along those lines. I mean, tell us a little bit about your sort of work in that area and kind of what this means for you and the sport in general to sort of be representing that community out there.
Thank you. Yeah, look, it's a space that I'm very passionate about. But in saying that, I have to say when I got this award, even when I was nominated as a finalist, I was like, this is crazy. Like there's so many other, people doing amazing initiatives and stuff out there over this past year. People are getting more and more involved and more vocal about it, which is really cool. But yeah, I was like pretty shocked when I won the role model of the year because I was like, gosh, everyone's doing other amazing stuff. Like really? But it's a space that I guess I've been involved with pretty much since I started playing hockey. I remember in high school, my best friend, she had two mums and they were big leaders in that whole gay rights movement, that they were the first gay couple that went on play school back in,
I remember that episode. Yeah, it was,
Yeah.
And their daughter, wasn't she an actress that she was in like Puberty Blues? And yeah.
Wow, you good with
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
so Brenna, she was my best friend.
Nice. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so I got exposed to all of their what they're involved with in the early days, and I got to then take part in the Mardi Gras a couple of times in high school. Firstly with high schoolers against homophobia, and then on the Wear It Purple float. So that was really awesome, and then. So how I then kind of fell a bit more heavily into the space is I guess I'd noticed within hockey that, things potentially weren't where they needed to be. And I remember I started dating a girl for the first time back in 2015, I want to say. I was quite young, and she was actually living in Perth in the training in the Hockeyroos program, and I was still in the junior Australian stuff. And I remember we had a junior camp, and I was singled out in front of the whole squad. And you're quite young. This is one of the first junior camps I've been a part of, and there were lots of us there. I want to say 30 something athletes. And there was the psychologist at the time and the coach, and they kind of were sitting there saying, oh, okay, now we've made this rule that you shouldn't be allowed to be with anyone who's involved in any pathways or any Hockey Australia program, blah, blah, blah. Greta, what do you think about that? And I remember I was sat there and I was just went red, and I was I can't even remember what I answered. But I remember just feeling really, targeted and singled out. And I was like, this is crap. I've got nothing to do with, what she does. This is completely different. This kind of just sucks being told who you can and can't be with.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so I guess over the years, that's kind of been a bit of inspiration, is we can be better in that space. People shouldn't have to sit there among their peers and, feel like that. And I think that Hockey Australia has come such a long way in that space over the years. It's pretty cool. We've got relationships within the team, and, people are very professional about how they deal with, whoever they want to be with. And I think people are so much more accepting now compared to what they used to be. And so, yeah, Hockey Australia is definitely they've become, I guess, over the years a leader in that pride in sport space.
Won 9 awards at the same awards as most of any sport, I believe.
Yeah. So that's it's very encouraging, and I think we do a good job at Hockey Australia now, encouraging everyone and anyone to play, and we've got guidelines and everything's in place to help situations like that. And so last year I got involved as the Pride in Sport ambassador through the AIS, and that was really educational. It was just like a bunch of workshops and networking with other ambassadors. So that was really cool to do. And then off the back of that, I just got involved with, the Hockey WA Pride round, and then we ran a Pride round in Hockey One, which is our national league now. And that was awesome. Everyone was keen to get involved, and now I think we're looking at growing it bigger and better for this year, and hopefully, it continues to grow and continues to create awareness.
Well, congratulations on the award and fantastic work you're doing there. And I will say, just on the level of having a Pride round in Hockey One, is that just so that New South Wales Pride can have their own round? Like, is that just a hidden agenda? Because you are playing for the Pride, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm still not 100% convinced on the fact that we're called New South Wales Pride, and then we've just stolen it to be like, we're the Pride in Pride. I'm like, I don't know if you just like stolen that. But I have been chatting about with like the lady from Hockey New South Wales about how we can expand Pride round and that kind of thing. And I'm hoping that whether it's this year or in coming years, that it won't just be the one game played on that weekend that's the Pride game. I'm hoping that it'll be a Pride round and every single team that plays that weekend takes part in.
Right.
I feel like that, more exposure, we can grow it a bit more. And, there's a few ideas in the works there of how we can make it bigger.
Watch this space basically and see kind of how it goes there. Yeah, I mean, you've got, surely with that award in your back pocket, Greta, it gives a bit of clout. You've got a bit of, you can go to Hockey New South Wales and be like, award, boom, make this around. This is what we're doing, all right? Olympic gold medal from Paris. Just saying. Eiffel Tower around my neck. Okay? Yeah. So there you go. Greta, we wrap up every single interview with a set of fun style, quick get-to-know-you style questions. As always, these are based on a Team Canada questionnaire that they gave their athletes ahead of both Rio and Pyeongchang. I'm using a field hockey athlete, David Carter. This is a questionnaire that David Carter got ahead of Rio. There's a drawing element. If you want to do it, you don't have to. If you want to draw, you can draw a picture of yourself. There's a Canadian animal, but as always, we say Australian animal, and draw a picture of a teammate. How are you drawing? Do you like drawing at all?
I'm really, really woeful in that artistic department. Really bad.
We can forgive you. If you decide to go through with it, just send it in and we can no doubt flick it up on our social media. But I'll start off with the first.
Want me to get a piece of paper right now? Do I need a piece of paper?
Look, I'm going to force you to do it. I feel like right now, for once, I'm going to say, yes, you should do this right now. I'm always so nice in this segment, Greta. I'm always just like, no, you don't have to, but no, stuff it. There you go. Put the challenge on it that she can draw right now. She's actually got paper. I haven't used this in
years, but I've got my drawing pad.
Is that like one of the metal tins with like the,
Yes.
Like the Derwent, are they Derwent pencils or?
I don't know how you say that. Stabler?
Yeah, okay. I remember as a kid, Derwent was like the brand, right? So, okay, well, in the background while you answer these questions, draw a picture of yourself. Just choose one, a picture of yourself, a teammate, or your favourite Australian animal.
Oh, okay.
Whichever one you choose. Maybe surprise me.
While I'm answering these questions.
Yeah, okay. There you go. I'm really putting you on the spot here. I feel like this should be a compulsory aspect of this questionnaire now moving forward. And you're going to become the first ever summer athlete to draw a picture. It's only ever been winter athletes who've drawn pictures on this show, Greta. So there you go. All right. Your favourite Olympic moment of all time is?
I can't remember it myself, but I want to say when Kathy Freeman won gold. I was 4 years old, so I don't have a fond memory, but that's iconic in my head.
That's a good answer. Do you, as a 4-year-old, did you get to go to any Olympic events at all being in Sydney?
Yeah, we went to, I think, a hockey game. Not that I remember again, but I remember we watched the road cycling. We had a friend who lived at a house just opposite Centennial Park, and the road cycling went past there.
Great.
So we've got photos of us sitting in the front yard with the flags and whatnot. And then also the beach volleyball down at Bondi Beach. Went to that.
Did you get to see Kerry and Natalie win the gold, or just kind of one of the prelim rounds, or you don't remember, or?
Do not remember. Just know the memory.
Often when I go to Bondi, like I often literally just look and go like, how did they put a stadium here sometimes? And I'm like, I remember how controversial it was when I was a kid, but like, yeah, I mean, epic that they did it. So, got to do it on Bondi. If you could choose any Olympic host city, where would it be?
That's a tough one. I'm really bad with these fast fire questions, by the way. I'm like the most indecisive person you ever meet.
while drawing as well. So
yeah, that's distracting. I want to say, I'm going to say Perth. Bring it to Perth.
yeah,
The beach, the weather.
you'd be next in line now that Brisbane's got it. Like if you're going through the cities, like Perth's next in line. So,
Yeah.
you know, you got Basil Zemplis, man. Basil's going to fight for a freaking Olympics. Come on.
Yeah. Well, it's super nice parks. The grass is green.
Exactly. It's nice, easy flight from Europe compared to Sydney, Brisbane and Melbourne. So
That's true.
we're ticking off all the boxes here. I just want to point out, I love David's answer for this next one. So the next question is, in my spare time, I most like to. His answer is eat chicken wings.
Okay.
In his spare time, he's just eating chicken wings.
I'm a vegetarian, so that's definitely not my answer. In my spare time, I like to go for walks and get coffee with friends. And I love to get out into nature and go hiking and camping.
Great answer. Is it Queen's Park, King's Park? What's the big park above Perth?
Kings Park.
King's Park, yeah. I remember that beautiful park. Great views of the city. I remember
it is really nice.
visiting there. Yeah, nice place to do it.
Over here, though, compared to like being back home in Sydney, we used to go down to like Snowy Mountains and Blue Mountains a lot. You can't really get that here, which is a bit of a downfall.
I remember Perth being very flat. I mean, coming from Hobart, where it's quite hilly, right? I just remember looking around Perth going like, this is a very flat city.
Very flat. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
it's very interesting. Yeah. The weirdest instruction a coach ever gave you?
We always have laughs at training about coaches saying stuff. Okay, well, this isn't a weird instruction, but I remember like in my brain when we were I think it was like under 15s, and we were like cracking into that like Swiss emerging talent squad thing. And you used to have to do like your warm-up laps around the outside. And I remember the coach saying something like, you're never going to make it if you cut the corners. If you cut any of the corner on this lap, like if you step 1 foot into the field, you're just going to fail because it's all the 1%ers, and you're just never going to make it if you put 1 foot inside the field. And I remember like, okay, we can't go in the field. I'm like, that is just the most ridiculous thing ever.
I was about to say that's the secret to why you made the Olympics. Your coach is right now listening or watching this going, I told you.
I told her, don't put a foot inside the field. You're cutting corners.
Second Olympics. There you go. Just they were right. Your favorite workout is?
I love running. I'm a big runner. I love my like long runs. I remember in COVID, I got really into running, and I ran from Botany to Manly.
Wow.
Much to my coach's dismay.
Is it like a Forrest Gump style thing? You just woke up one day, I felt like running, or did you plan it? Or
we've been like training a little bit, doing some like longer runs, and then we're like, oh, okay, we're going to do this on like Saturday morning. We're going to get up, we're going to do the run, and then we're going to catch the ferry back to the city and like whatnot. And had such a good time, loved it. And yeah, obviously like it takes a fair few lead up runs to be able to run 26Ks. Like you don't just do it out of nowhere. So I'd say like, yeah, doing a workout like that, a nice long run, that's what I quite look forward to when I finish hockey, is getting back into my long running, because obviously it's not really conducive to the fast interval pace of style of hockey. Second
Olympic career then for marathon, because they're peaking like in their late 30s, early 40s. So you've got time,
That's true.
Plenty of time. If you could have lunch with any one person, who would it be?
Do they have to be alive?
Nope. They can be dead, alive, anyone.
This question's hard because I always think I'd want to have it with someone who can help me, like teach me or understand more about like how I can make more of an impact or like do something good in life. And I don't know who necessarily that would be, but I think someone who could teach me what not to do would be someone like Hitler. And I think it would be really interesting to sit down with him for lunch and understand, obviously, he had a lot of things going on, but understand, I don't know, just ask him some questions and just know, yeah, I don't know. I've always been really interested in history, and I did modern history for in high school. So obviously we studied him a lot, and
it's one of those ones that like you kind of almost feel bad for answering, but I completely understand. Like I've often answered Hitler for that because like you just like sit down with like Donald Trump, like and just like look at this guy and like, are you really who you are? Like it's just it would be just an interesting conversation to sit down with one of these people from history who are revered for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. That's probably not the best answer, but that's what I'm coming with.
No, I take it.
I'd like to find someone who does something really like important and I don't know, maybe in like the health space or like the environment space, I want to say.
Okay. I like that. Got to laugh at David's answer for this one. The guy I once saw at the airport in Denver, Colorado in 1997 who looked exactly like me. Sure. You get confused in lunch, but sure. All right. Your favorite sandwich is, Greta?
I want to say it is. Have you been to Perth?
I have, yes.
Been to North Street Store?
Probably not. It was a while
iconic cinnamon scrolls. That's North Street Store. So like cinnamon scrolls in Perth are really big.
Okay.
Anyway, there they do this veggie baguette, which I don't know if it's a sandwich, but that's what I'm going with.
It's fancy.
And it's got tomatoes, mozzarella, basil, currants, that kind of vibe. So yeah, the veggie baguette from North Street Store.
I like it. Yeah, literally the only food I remember eating in Perth was going to Fremantle and having a really good hot dog. Yeah, that's all I can remember from the cuisine of Perth. So
that's a lot better than that, let me tell you.
Sounds good. I can imagine that's quite good. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
I think it would be to apparate. Is that the word?
To apparate.
Is that the word they use in Harry Potter?
Yes. Refresh my memory because I know what it is, but I don't know what it is.
You can go from one place to another.
Oh, like, yeah, okay. Yep, okay.
I knew the word now. Anyway.
Let's go with it. Sounds special. Sounds better than like transportation or like, or teleportation.
Because like you could think how many more things you could do with your life. Like you could just bounce from one side of the globe to the other and just mix with all these different people and you could learn so much more and do so many more things.
Yeah. I could get that sandwich in Perth right now, just click my fingers. Yeah. Come back and go, Greta, this is pretty good. Yeah, on the interview. So like, yeah. I use the word apparate more, guests on this show moving forward. It's just such
we'll look that one up first and just confirm that that's actually.
We don't research on this show, Greta. Come on, you think that involves effort. I'm questioning David's answer for this one. The best candy in the world is... and he's gone with bacon. So, anyway, he likes his bacon apparently.
Again, cannot agree with that. Really likes his meat.
He does. In candy. Okay.
Candy in the world. I'm going to say, okay, I've got two. Licorice bullets or Jersey caramels.
Oh, yes. Jersey caramels.
Oh, underrated.
They are. Like, I remember as a kid, my mum used to buy them all the time from like Darryl Lee, and they were so good. And licorice, I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with licorice, but like, I'd take the Jersey caramels. Do you remember cobbers? Were they like the chocolate covered caramel? Like we called them cobbers. You got them at school kiosk. So
Tasmanian thing.
Maybe, but they were so. We don't have many things that positive probably to talk about, but we have Eddie Ockenden and Queen Mary. That's all you need. But yeah, no, they were really good, and because I'm a caramel fan.
But I can't remember them.
It's maybe one of those because like how people like talk to you like, oh, they're not really distinct accents in Australia, but there are distinct things we call in different states like palmy, palmer, togs, cozies, things like that. So maybe cobber's one of those ones, which, we'll get to the bottom of it. As a kid, Greta, your favourite sports team was?
Oh, gosh. So, like, we were, like, a really not sporty watching household. We were always out playing sports or going hiking. And I was like to Mum, why do we not, like, have any teams that we follow? What is this? Like, I want a team like all the other families have. And she was like, well, I'd rather be out there playing the sport than sitting on the couch watching the sport. It's like, oh, sassy, but hey, I get
Hi
that.
again, Mum, if you're listening, by the way. Just, hello.
Hi, Mum.
Hi, Mrs. Hayes.
So, oh gosh, we really we weren't an AFL family. We weren't a rugby family. I really can't even give you a team.
Do you drink the Kool-Aid in Perth? Like, do you drink like a Dockers or an Eagles? Get involved in that at all?
Dockers now.
Yes, good answer.
And watch the Dockers get absolutely whipped last weekend by the Swans.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I can jump on the Dockers bandwagon a little bit more.
They've always been my second favourite team, the Dockers, just because I've always felt bad for them because they've never won anything. And I hate West Coast. I'm a Carlton supporter, so I'm on the same page of being thrashed by Sydney recently, so it's fine. But no, I've always liked the Dockers and hated the Eagles. So
yeah.
I
also quite like Sydney. After watching them smack the Dockers the other day, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just stay Sydney, stay loyal.
My experience at the game the other night weren't fantastic from some Sydney supporters, so I'm just going to withhold from answering anything around that anymore moving forward. Speaking of sports movie, do you have a favourite sports movie, Greta?
She's the man.
Yes, that's been answered multiple times recently, and I love it. Really, because that's
iconic. I love that movie.
People go with your cliches, your cool runnings, these ones, which are great. Don't get me wrong, but She's the Man is a sports movie. So yes, that and Bring It On have been answered recently, and it got me very excited.
Yes, Bring It On. Love that.
Yes, She's the Man. And She's the Man progressive or difficult to watch nowadays? I'm kind of intrigued on where that sits 20 years later, because it's been a while since I've seen it, but I want to say progressive, but also probably not as well.
Maybe I should go back and watch it with that lens on, years. But yeah, I can see that.
Because I know there's a scene where she flashes, is it Chad Michael Murray to prove that she's a girl, and that doesn't hold up well. But the whole, I'd be intrigued to see how it holds up.
Yeah.
All these years.
Yeah.
I love this question. This is the last one I'm going to end on. This might be my favorite one because you can interpret this however you want, Greta. When you were little, what was one thing you always thought? Maybe we need your mum to phone in and read your diary here.
Literally. What was one thing I always thought?
David says that he would be taller. That was his answer. A non-meat answer. That's a new one for David.
Meat grows on trees.
I'd have more bacon.
Oh gosh, one thing I always thought. You know what? I've definitely got some good ones, and my sisters would be good to ask on this one because I used to come up. I was the youngest of three sisters, and I always used to say really dumb stuff. I'd always be getting lyrics wrong and coming up with these embarrassing things. I remember once I said to this random guy who I for some reason thought was my dad. I looked him down to up, and I was like, "Dad, what the hell are you wearing?" And then I was around all of my siblings and cousins, and they started laughing. So I just embarrassed myself in front of this guy. Anyway, wow. I used to do dumb stuff like that all the time. So I'm sure there'd be a million dumb things that I used to think. The only thing I can kind of come up with is I used to always get lyrics wrong. So I'd be singing things so incredibly wrong, and my sisters always used to laugh at me. So it's not really something that I thought, but it's just.
Any classic examples that come to mind? Is there one song that you would just always completely butcher?
One song was, okay, I don't actually know what the actual lyrics are still to this day, but I remember there used to be a kid called Ricky at school.
Yep.
And so my sisters used to, "Oh, Ricky, Ricky, why don't you give me a call?" You know that song?
Yeah, that's ABBA, isn't it? Isn't that? Yeah. Why don't you? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Yeah. I don't know what the song is either because I know exactly what the song is, but it's definitely not Ricky.
Ring me or something.
Yeah.
But I was thinking it was Ricky, and so then they're like, "Oh my God, you have a crush on Ricky?" Oh no, okay, I've got it. I know what I used to think.
Hit me with it. Go.
My sisters used to tell me that if you went like this, it means that you have a crush on someone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I went to the same primary school as them, and they were 2 years and 4 years older than me. And I'd be in the playground or whatever, and they'd see me and they'd come over to me and they'd be like, "Hey, Greta." They'd be looking at the person who they thought I had a crush on, and I'd be so humiliated. And I was like, stop this, crush on him. And I was like, so like just dead set thought that was just an international move of, hey, you have a
Everybody
crush.
knows that that's the universal symbol for you've got a crush on someone. Wow.
Yeah. And I remember I was just, scarred. I just thought they were going
Sisters
around.
are so cruel, Greta.
So they did lots I'm sure there's plenty more where that came from, but lots of stuff like that they used to get me with.
Save it for the autobiography. Was it in the diary? Maybe your mum would know what you thought back then, you know?
Maybe
So
after this.
that's up there with a very high answer for what we've had on that category. So I like that. Greta, this has been a lot of fun. I'll get you. You can draw that after we've done this. Send it in. I know it's very distracting, those questions, but
I've started. I've got a few muscles popping. That's as far as.
That's as far as we'll tease that and we'll put it up on social. You can send it to me afterwards.
Okay.
But if people want to follow you on social media in the lead up to the Olympics, post Olympics, all the advocacy work you're doing, where can people sort of stay up to date with everything you got going on?
My main handle is on Instagram. I use Greta Hayes. I'm trying to get into the whole TikTok thing. I think I've missed that bandwagon. I don't think I'm that.
We've picked it up, Greta, and we're terrible at it. So if we can do it, you can do it too. It's fine. You're younger than us. So.
But yeah, Instagram's my main one.
Okay. And what's the handle for your username to find you?
Greta Hayes. Simple.
Easy. I ask a dumb question, I get a simple answer, basically. Greta, it has been a lot of fun having you on the show. Best of luck for Paris, beyond, everything else, and really appreciate your time and off the podium today.
Thank you so much for having me.